Hi, and welcome to the Law Center videocast. I'm your host and founder of the Law Center, Larry DeMarco. Thank you for joining us this evening. We go live on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., so please join us in the chat room on the right where you can interact with other viewers. Today, we are here with Dr. Alan Blotcky. He's a clinical child psychologist practicing in Birmingham, Alabama, an author, and an experienced expert witness. Dr. Blotcky, thank you for joining us on the Law Center videocast.
Thanks for inviting me, Larry. I'm glad to be here.
I also want to thank you. In addition to those things, Dr. Blotcky also has provided me several scripts that have turned into successful parental alienation videos on my playlist. So, Doctor, also thank you for contributing that. They've been got great responses. They've been fun to watch.
Yeah, you do a great job with those. They're entertaining and informative at the same time. That's a great combination.
And thank you for providing the information part of that equation. So, Doctor, you've written several articles about helping alienated children and alienated parents. How'd you get so passionate about this topic and take that up as a project?
Well, I've been doing a lot of divorce and child custody cases probably for the last 15 years or so. And as I did more and more cases, I encountered more and more parental alienation. And so it was sort of, it wasn't anything that I seeked out. It found me. And I saw that parental alienation is fairly common. It can be quite severe. It's complicated. It can be convoluted. And it's very difficult in the legal context because you have so many players in a legal case. You have the judge, you have the attorneys, you have the guardian ad litem, you have mediators, you have therapists, you have mental health experts. And if everybody's not on the same page, parental alienation can get missed, dismissed, confused, turned upside down. So it's a very complicated subject, actually.
So you're involved in this out of duty as a professional from the experience of treating patients, not necessarily a personal crusade from your own experience.
No, that's absolutely right. I don't have any experience personally with it in my personal life.
Thank God.
But I've seen so much of it clinically that it's a major problem. And of course, there are varying degrees of parental alienation. No two cases are alike. But it happens often enough, and it's complicated enough that it intrigues me. And I am kind of on a crusade now to educate, because I think it's really the key to solving these cases oftentimes is educating the judge, educating attorneys, educating the parties involved, educating the public. So I am kind of on a crusade.
So tell us about your work as a child psychologist. What are the different things that you do in your psychology practice?
You mean besides parental alienation?
Sure. Clinically, forensically, evaluating patients. Tell us about you generally, doctor.
I would say, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. That's why I've got so much gray hair. I would say probably for the first 25 years, I had a very general kind of practice where I saw all kinds of children, adolescents, young adults, older adults, did a lot of evaluations, did a lot of psychotherapy. I really did a general kind of practice. I saw everything. So it's been more in the last 15 years that I've sort of honed in on divorce and child custody as a whole. And then, of course, parental alienation is a part of that. But divorce cases are interesting. Custody arrangements can be really important. Trying to decide what custody arrangement is best in any given family can be difficult. So I've kind of honed in on that. And then, of course, parental alienation is sort of a subset of that.
But yet frequent enough that has caused you to take that up as a writing topic, because there's several articles about that topic particularly, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's sort of my crusade has led me to be an expert. And so I get involved in lots of cases of suspected parental alienation. There are times I get court appointed by the judge.
I was going to ask you that.
To see both parties. Then there are other times when one party will simply retain me to help them in their case, whatever it might be. So I get involved in these cases in various different ways. I can be retained by one party. I can be court appointed. I can be involved in seeing the kids, and so I get involved that way. There are various ways that I get involved. But I would say now, as we speak today, a lot of the cases I get are people calling me up wanting help in very complicated, complex cases.
So what observations have you made about parental alienation and family court, particularly about the need for awareness and your heightened expertise for more experts in the court?
So let me get on my soapbox. And my soapbox really has to do with attorneys. I had a case this morning that brings this home to me. Attorneys are in a unique position to be very helpful in cases of parental alienation because they can deal with their clients. They can say certain things to their clients to help develop insight and change behavior. Unfortunately, what I encounter is that attorneys either don't get it or they don't want to be in that role of a corrective factor.
If I can, Doctor, I can even explain that. I do hold your thought because I want you to consider your answer. But as an attorney, I can tell you there's a problem with our ethics of responsibility and the antagonistic legal system. We as attorneys are trained that we have to be zealous advocates of our clients, and we can't judge them. We have to represent them, and that there's a financial. The spouses in the domestic relations setting are set against each other because there's one pie that the courts look at it as dividing. So lawyers have interpreted the rules of ethics as requiring them to win at all costs, to be a zealous advocate for the client, as opposed to considering the needs of really someone who's still a family member, which is the opposite spouse. So it's actually a problem not only with quote unquote individuals, but the profession as a system and how the ethics are interpreted, which I understand you've addressed that as well in some articles. Let's hold that thought. Well, actually, no, we don't have to hold that thought. I'll leave that to you because I interrupted you, but I wanted to address it while it was relevant. No, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, you framed it exactly right. Because I read your article. And my new paper that's going to be coming out soon is basically saying this, that in severe cases of parental alienation, that is just as toxic and just as harmful as physical abuse or sexual abuse. And I would maintain, I'm not an attorney, but I would maintain that if an attorney has a responsibility to deal with somebody when they see physical abuse or sexual abuse, then they ought to feel the same sense of responsibility when they see a case of severe parental alienation. Now, is that naive? Perhaps. But that's the angle that I'm taking with it now, which is it's severe enough to where I think attorneys, and I'm lumping them together, that attorneys should take it ethically upon themselves to deal with a case of parental alienation when it's severe, even if that means going against their own client in terms of getting them to shape their behavior differently. So one issue that I will also present to you that's common with attorneys is our clients are going to be saying, wait a minute, I'm not alienating this child. This is
Yeah,
coming from the other side.
right,
So, and we're not ethically, we're not supposed
right,
to be
right,
judge or jury.
right,
We're supposed to accept
right,
our representations for our client is true. We have to do a reasonable investigation and not accept an unreasonable representation or lie. But it's not for us to say
right.
it's parental alienation because our clients are claiming that there was some severe abuse. And
But
it
that's where I
puts us
see
in a
my
conflicting role.
right. But that's where I see my role come in. If there's a mental health expert involved in the case, and that mental health expert is saying, I believe there's parental alienation. This parent, I believe, is the alienating parent. This is the parent who is the rejected or targeted parent. Then rather than trying to throw me under the bus, perhaps attorneys should open up their eyes and use that information to then try to take some steps to help correct the situation. I'm not trying to say that all the responsibility falls on attorneys because I don't believe that, and that would be unfair. I'm just saying sometimes it would be nice if they would get on board and give up this zealous representation at all cost, when in fact it may be their client who is causing the problem.
Or not to mention, parents don't want to abuse children. They don't wake up and say, hey, how great it would be for me to destroy my child's life. They don't, that's not what's going on. It's more a personality disorder, for lack of I would think that that's the
Yeah.
best term I've heard your
Yeah.
industry use.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, divorce brings out the worst in people. And if you have a parent who's vindictive and they want to hurt their soon-to-be ex-spouse, what better way to do it than to weaponize the child to hurt that other spouse? So a lot of times this sort of parental alienation is being fueled by vindictiveness or fear or jealousy, a variety of different emotions. And so they're not really thinking straight, and they're certainly not really thinking about what's in the child's psychological best interest or well-being. And that's where things can kind of get awry.
So how do you try to educate the court when you testify? What so I'll make this you do with this what you want, but I take it that is there another expert in every case? Are you always given a report of another evaluator?
Yeah.
And when you educate that judge, what initial groundwork or foundation do you have to lay for your testimony? I know there's a lot there. Break it down any way you'd like.
So usually, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't think I've had a single case where there was an opposing mental health expert, which is nice because then you have the mental health experts fighting, and that just adds another layer to the confusion. So that's good that doesn't happen. Here's what I normally do. I get the party that I'm involved with to put together a timeline which shows the sequence of events that are of concern. And then I make sure that my testimony comes in as late as possible after lots of information is a part of the record. And then I come in and try to focus on that timeline visually, put it up on a big screen TV, so that everybody can see the sequence of events that have occurred in this case. And for some reason, seeing it visually, people seem to get it better. If I just get on the stand and give testimony, oftentimes it helps, but it really helps if they're also able to look at this timeline of events, and you can clearly see the pattern of things that have happened to get us to where we are now. So that's the approach, sort of the general approach that I use.
And I take that system came from experience, trial and error, or
Exactly.
through doing it for as long as you have.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I developed it myself. I haven't discussed it with anybody else. I just have noticed that kind of timeline, people seem to be able to see it and understand it and digest it and understand the implications of it.
Do you get any feedback from the lawyer who calls your testimony regarding any type of percentage for success? Is it like one of the difficult things to do in baseball, like hitting a baseball where 300 is an all-star, or is it more like a free throw where 80% of the time you're persuading the judge?
I guess it depends on what you call success. My definition of success is that the party who has hired me comes out better than what they were before.
I would
And
agree with that.
I've had some major successes where custody of a child will be removed from one parent and given to the other parent because of that one parent's alienating behavior. I've had a number of those cases. Those are clear sort of successes. But there are all kinds of areas of gray where rejected or targeted parents can get a much better deal after getting back into the courtroom and dealing with this timeline and explaining things. The other thing that I have found, in addition to the timeline, is, and this holds true for judges and juries, they like a narrative that makes sense. They want a story that makes sense. They don't want just little pieces of information thrown out. They want a story that makes sense and that's connected. The dots are connected. And that's especially true with juries.
Uh, when you testify, are you mostly testifying to a judge in a family court setting, which I would assume?
Yeah, either in a family court setting or domestic relations setting. I also do some of these allegations of abuse as a part of divorces end up in criminal court. So I would go to criminal court as well.
Right. Gotcha.
So I do both.
Yeah, but not civil abuse court, right?
No.
That's very
No.
Johnny Depp was the first that I was aware in terms of publicly.
Yeah.
So when you testify, do you find yourself in a dual role that you first have to educate the judge before you begin talking about the facts of the particular case?
Every judge is different. That happens occasionally. Oftentimes, it's kind of the other way around. They get educated as a result of going through the case. Sometimes, I just had a case the other day where I could tell from the moment I walked in that judge didn't want to hear much from me. He doesn't buy what we were trying to sell. And I was put into a very small box as to what I could testify to. So I've encountered sort of everything. And educating the judge, they have to be open to it. But oftentimes it's through the course of the testimony, as they see the dots connected, you can see the light bulb go off.
What advice do you have for attorneys representing that out of custody targeted parent? And when I ask this question, keep in mind that there's also, I try to speak to an audience of self-represented litigants who are in the shoes of their own attorney.
Yeah. So I always tell rejected parents, and part of the problem with rejected parents is they get feeling defeated, they get feeling hopeless, they're tired, they've lost a lot of money, and they want to give up. And of course, that's their right to do. But part of the job of a mental health expert, and I think part of the job of the attorney, is to not let them get defeated, because that's exactly what the alienating parent wants. They want the other parent to get so defeated that they give up. And so part of it is bolstering them, giving them hope, giving them optimism, giving them a course of action to take that perhaps will make their situation better. And I think the attorney for a rejected parent has to be assertive. They have to be proactive. They have to get in there and fight for their client.
What changes would you like to see in the family court system, particularly as it relates to parental alienation, but not only? You can also comment on that generally if you'd like.
Well, as you noted to begin with, how adversarial it is, how contentious it is. It's set up to be that way.
Yes.
And unfortunately, what ends up happening is you have mother and father with their attorneys going to their separate corners, digging their heels in, and it ends up being a protracted, expensive, emotionally draining, hurtful experience. And so I don't think that works very well. I'm kind of in favor of this 50-50 shared custody default position, where you then can go to court and argue against that, but that ought to be the starting place. Now, it's not perfect, and I understand the problems with it, but it's better than the system we have here, which is we have no default position. We're going to argue and fight about anything we get. So I like the idea of starting out with a 50-50 shared custody default position. Then you have to go to court if you want something different than that. And that's how I would like to see the next step, at least in Alabama. I know some states that have done that. Kentucky, Arkansas, West Virginia. Some states have really moved towards that 50-50 default position. And the reason they've done that is because the research shows that shared custody is almost always better than primary custody, unless there's some obvious reasons why not to do that.
But in practice, it seems like the custodial parent becomes the mother. If correct me if I'm wrong, the statistics that I saw are 4 out of 5 times that most of the time the judges awards to one family, one parent or the other. And then of that, it's usually 80-20 or 4 out of 5 in the breakdown.
Well, and that's why I like this 50-50 default position, because that would make it equal to begin with. Then you have to go to court if you want something different than that. But a lot of cases, I think, a lot of cases would be in good shape if we could get something close to a 50-50 shared arrangement.
And
sorry,
the literature, the people who write on this topic, there seems to be a division, almost a political division, between what I'll call parental alienation proponents or theorists versus the anti-domestic violence lobby.
Yeah.
Can you address a little bit how those theories interact in a custody battle between parents who are trying to get a bigger chunk of that apple?
Well, I don't know that I've seen it play itself out so much in battles in court, but you're certainly correct about sort of in the mainstream media and even in the professional literature. There is a group that is anti-parental alienation because they think it is used by abusive parents, especially men, to justify or to blame the other parent for their abuse, and that they then end up with custody of their children. And my response to that is, well, then your expert didn't do a very good job, because when I go into a case of parental alienation, the first thing on my mind is, who's the alienator here? Who's the abusive person here? And who's the rejected person here? And so that falls on my responsibility to tease that apart and find that out. So what they're talking about doesn't mean that parental alienation doesn't exist, because that's what they try to argue, is that it doesn't even exist. What I'm saying is sometimes mistakes are made and things do get messed up, and a judge will order a child to be in the custody of the wrong parent. And that's what we have to fight against. So we're really on the same page, but it is kind of an ideological political battle ultimately.
So what is the biggest challenge in that, in avoiding the wrong call, in getting to some type of solution? My understanding as well is that the anti-domestic violence lobby thinks that what parental alienation primarily has become is an illegitimate defense of that abuser, like you just mentioned.
Right.
So what is the solution to people seeing this not as a zero-sum game, that both are used by abusive spouses? Either the alienator is abusive in parental alienation, or a stronger physical party, often the male, is the physically intimidating one that is abusing power, the family power.
You know, in all the cases that I've done, I can really only think of one where I think the primary custody ended up in the wrong hands, meaning an alienating parent. And the only reason that happened is because the rejected parent gave up. Too tired.
Is that a financial thing?
It was a financial thing. It was a tired thing.
Right.
It was a defeated thing. It was a hopeless thing. And so they gave up. And because of that, I thought the wrong parent ended up with primary custody. That's the only case I can think of. Now, I know it probably has happened, but it hasn't happened because the experts got it wrong. It happened because one parent gives up. They get so defeated and so financially drained that they just say, I can't fight it anymore. And so they give up, and there's nothing I can do as an expert at that point to try to correct that. Because sometimes that's just the reality of it. It happens.
You often recommend at least an expert, but often for some issues of parental alienation, more is needed: a guardian ad litem, an attorney, and a
mediator.
And a mediator. You recommend more than one player, of course. How about for the parents, the maybe the inner city parents who are blue collar and don't have disposable income? Maybe they just have enough to get an attorney, but maybe even just a limited scope attorney. My thought is that parent should still at least prove the elements, even if you don't have an expert opinion. Look at the 5-factor model, the 17 alienated strategies, and the 8 distinguished behaviors that distinguish between an abused and estranged a child. Do you have any advice beyond that? I know you believe in experts. Do you have any other guidance for maybe someone who can't afford to pay the evaluator?
Well, to do exactly what you just said, to do the research on your own, to get on the computer, to dig up the 5-factor thing, the 17 different alienating behaviors, put that together, put together a timeline, do it yourself. Put together the timeline and be ready to present that stuff in court yourself. It's not ideal, but it gives you a fighting chance. I've seen it work. Generally speaking, pro se, in my experience, it doesn't work out very well. It depends on the judge and the case. But if you can't afford an expert, you can't afford an expert. And so you have to then take it into your hands and put together the materials as best you can.
And I ask this, because I want to point out to viewers that everything that Dr. Blotcky writes is still practically helpful, even for the pro se litigant. We're often talking to attorneys, but when you're your own attorney, we are talking to you as a parent. Doctor, you are in Birmingham, Alabama. Can people out of state still retain you?
Yeah, I think I have cases in 10 states right now. Yes, I just finished a case in Las Vegas. I've been to a criminal case in Ohio. There's no problem crossing state lines.
And as far as treatment is concerned, I guess primarily for people locally, or let me just ask you straight out. Do you also you're talking to me as an expert? Do you also help targeted parents or children who are dealing with a high family conflict?
Yeah, I do. But I've gotten so involved in the court process of it all that most of the stuff that I'm doing right now is sort of court-related cases, getting ready to go to court. Because unfortunately, legal action is really your only recourse in a lot of these cases. It's not like you can pick up the phone and call your ex-spouse and say, hey, let's work this out. Because obviously that would have already happened. Most of the time, legal action is what you have to do. It's certainly not ideal. It's certainly not what you want to do, but it is what it is. And so oftentimes, most of what I do now is getting cases ready to go to court. I mean, that's just the way it is right now.
Doctor, if you provide me your contact information, I want to direct the viewers that will be in the description portion of the video. But while we're talking verbally, doctor, how can people get in touch with you if they want to retain you either as a treating doctor or as an expert witness?
My email address is alanblotcky, alanblotcky @att.net. Email me. My phone number is 205-912-7171. Contact me.
Doctor, thank you for that. Thank you for making yourself available. Thank you for the articles that you write and for being a guest here on the Law Center video cast.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
We've been here with Dr. Alan Blotcky, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell to be alerted of new videos, often written by Dr. Blotcky. Tune in every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., where you can watch together with other viewers and comment. Please check the description portion of this video where you can learn more about Dr. Blotcky and the Law Center. Signing off. Tune in next time. Bye for now.